All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Allison from Halton Food, and it is my extreme pleasure to welcome my friend Rodger Tschanz from the University of Guelph. I guess, Rodger, we've known each other for what, a while? 2005? I was doing my undergrad and I started following him around because he worked in the Bovie greenhouses, and I'm like, hey, can I help you water plants? And he said, yes, absolutely. Take
Yeah.
some work off my plate. But Rodger has worked in the field of horticulture at Guelph since graduating in 1989. He's currently the research technician with the Department of Plant Ag, where he's involved with the ornamental breeding projects, teaching plant ID, and liaising with all the high school horticultural and science students. He also is the manager of the Guelph Ornamental Trial Garden Program since its inception in 2001. And this is an amazing program that has trial sites in Guelph, Milton, at Royal Botanical Gardens, RBG in Burlington. And every year, like between 400 and 500 new edibles, annuals, and perennials are evaluated for their suitability for the Southern Ontario gardener. So you guys are in for a huge treat today because we're going to be talking about edibles in the container landscape. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rodger. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it into the chat box because at the end of this presentation, we'll be able to have a Q&A. So welcome, Rodger.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you for that introduction. That was very energetic and makes my job sound more exciting than it sometimes is, but I really appreciate that. Yes, time flies. That was a long time ago when we spent time in the greenhouse. And it's I was just saying now, I'm sort of stuck working in the greenhouse, and I guess compared to some people, I've got it very lucky. It's a nice place to be during COVID, I must admit. Anyway, yeah, so we evaluate primarily ornamentals, annuals and perennials in the trials, but I've got this small little program, I guess, going on side by side with the ornamental trials is edibles for small urban spaces, and it seems to go well with container ornamentals as well. And so I've been doing that for a few years, and I've collected a little bit of data over the years, and I'm happy to be able to share it with you today. So let's start with talking about containers. Okay, sorry, I just got to get going. Yeah, and this is a really cute little hydroponic setup, vertical garden, but unfortunately I haven't trialed any of my edibles in this system, but not to say it couldn't work for some of them. This is more like what I would be trialing in, playing around with different soilless types of potting mixes, and growing in different kinds of containers. For the most part, it's plastic pots, because that's just real convenient. But sometimes we like to play around some different things. And I just put this picture here because when I was at the CNE a few years ago, I found this quite a nice display. And again, a lot of what I do is providing the public and visitors to the trial with some ideas about different ways of doing things. And yeah, there's quite a few ideas on this slide. Using more standard types of potting. There's also mixing ornamentals with edibles, which gives you a fantastic use or range of uses in containers, and great for patios and balconies and such. This is a rooftop garden, I believe, and along the side of it, we have raised beds and with herbs growing. This happened, this Wex Pops was a University of Guelph initiative from CEDRID, or basically let's say the landscape architecture part of CEDRID at the University of Guelph. And they were looking, I guess this was 2019, they were looking at ways of making strip mall parking lots a little bit more human friendly. And so the reason I include this in here is because there were a lot of edibles mixed in here. We have an asparagus breeding program at the University of Guelph, and these are some asparagus 1-year-old, 2-year-old type asparagus seedlings growing in these containers. So this was really a good example of taking this a mixture of annuals and edibles and putting them together. Here, I think I have another shot of it here with they were using again, when I say sustainability at the bottom, the left-hand corner of this screen, I'm talking about the fact that they've tried to use different types of containers in this creation as well. Things that were in the University of Guelph surplus pile, and these were steel cans that have been used for recycling, for collecting recycling around campus, and then that changed. So the physical resources had all these garbage cans that were repainted to make them a little bit more attractive. So here we have, a mixture of edibles, and like this, you may notice that this is not a strip mall in Toronto. This is on the center of campus at the University of Guelph. And this is where it got installed after it was taken down from the Toronto location. And I think it was up in Toronto for about 6 weeks, and then reinstalled, or part of it reinstalled on campus for the students to see in the fall. So anyway, just another idea of using growing plants in containers and herbs, and the asparagus in the long term wouldn't grow well here, but it certainly suited the display purpose here. And this, just to finish up with that, this was really a people place. In addition to creating a space for plants, it was also a place for people to gather. Back in 2019, when we could do that, and we desired to do that, this was a place that in Toronto was acted like a place for music, a place for people just to sit down and rest their legs after walking along the sidewalks. Anyway, it created a really nice environment in an otherwise sterile, biosterile type of parking lot. And then this is a picture from William Dam Seeds. Went there a few years ago, but another mixed container, a little bit more standard, raised container with a mixture of ornamentals and herbs and vegetables. So just before I start talking about plants, because I was talking about containers, I just want to ask you rhetorically, I guess, what kind of potting mixes do you use? This is a standard peat-based, just peat. It's a big component of a lot of our potting mixes we use in horticulture. But by itself, it's got a very low pH and would actually kill plants, pH of 3 or 4 from some of these bogs. So it has to have lime added to it to make it plant friendly. But anyway, so that's basic peat. And now oftentimes for our standard potting mixes, we will add perlite to that to increase the porosity. I'm sort of on my own little campaign, I guess, to try to use potting mixes that don't include perlite. If you've ever taken plants or thrown out the soil from a standard potting mix into your garden, you usually end up with a lot of white dots that sort of the perlite, which is expanded, a very fluffy rock material that will float to the surface if it's in a flooded area. And you probably have seen that white perlite floating around in a garden. And I personally don't like the look of that. So I'm sort of got my own little campaign to try to come up with alternatives. And so not just because of me, but for other reasons, there certainly have been a number of alternatives coming out in the marketplace. And this one is from a commercial soil mix provider called Sunshine Mix PF, or perlite free. And what they do is they take the peat moss like this, and then they screen it, get all the big sticks and big chunks out. and then regrind them and re-add them to this mix, so that instead of burning the stuff that they screen out of peat as they normally would, they're including it and making it a certain consistency of size, and it's evenly spread throughout the mix to create a natural alternative to perlite, which is kind of a, I would say, increases the porosity that we were trying for, and this will naturally break down with time and sort of look natural, right? This is another a substitute for perlite that we've been seeing in the marketplace for a number of years now, well over 10 years, using coconut coir to add to peat mixes to increase the porosity. Now, the problem with coconut coir is in our area, this is imported from Sri Lanka or the Philippines or Vietnam. So how energy efficient is it to use something like this? Another thing is more recent, probably the most recent addition to the mixes is this wood fiber substrate, and where they take wood chips and they steam it, and they basically break down all the fibers to make them more obvious, and then incorporate that into peat. So that will help with the porosity in the peat base. So those are some choices. I don't know. They're certainly available to the commercial grower. Eventually these should become more available to the home gardener as well. Anyway, the inspiration for my talk comes from the edible trials at the University of Guelph, as well as a chef's garden, which I'll talk about in a minute. I had the opportunity to go to the California Spring Trials in 2019, where all the plant breeders showcased their new plant offerings. And then I also, because I'm an All-America Selections judge, or AAS judge, I'll talk about some of the edible winners in that program. Okay. So this was a picture of our trials at Landscape Ontario. It was an open house day. It's always nice when you have freebies to give away to visitors to the garden, and that lower right-hand corner shows some of the edibles that were ripe on the day of our open house. But the trial here was primarily an in-ground trial. But like if I was to trial a material, I'll trial it in the ground as well as the container. Okay. So this is an example picture from the 2019 Chef's Garden. So you can see it's all very tight together, but this is just outside the Bovie greenhouse. Like, I look at it every day. I walk in to work, and yeah. So what we're doing in this case was we were partnering with the hospitality services on campus, and they were looking at ways of producing some really local food to be incorporated into special dinners that they were hosting on campus, as well as creating an opportunity for any people in the food services to learn a little bit more about where the plants and where the food they use comes from. So there's a sustainability facet to this as well, where we were using leftover pails that hospitality services would use in the course of a year. And a lot of food-based products would arrive in these white pails, and butter, cookie dough, just trying to think of some of the labels I saw on the pails. And they, when you're providing food for 20,000 plus a day on campus, you develop quite an inventory of these white pails. And so the idea was we provided a place for the chefs on campus to grow some of these things, and they would drill holes into the bottom of the pails to create drainage. But this was the display, and they also used these black crates, bulb crates, and I think they had some collapsible crates that they had other food items arrive in, and they just filled up whatever they could with plants and grew them, and they had a really successful production. So combined in ground and containers here, and they grew pretty much everything. I think this is carrots in these pails here. So they were kind of unusual looking carrots, colored carrots that they could use. So, and this is what that all turns into, which was kind of nice because I got to sample it, which was really good. 5-course meal. And I'm just going back to this picture. We were using most of the plants in this trial were all America Selections winners. So the people, this gentleman with his back to us is VJ. He's the executive chef on campus. And these other folks are garden writers and garden communicators, and they're having a tour of this site just to get an idea of what the All America Selections winners look like. And they also got to partake in this meal. And I can't remember all the, I was trying to find the recipe I had or the menu that I received with this meal, but I couldn't in time for this meeting. But I do remember watermelon that's been pressed and compressed. That was really interesting. That was the first time I ever experienced that. And then in this picture here, we see a pool of yellow underneath the main course, and that's sweet corn that's been ground up. And that seemed like a really good way of, we didn't have a lot of sweet corn to work with, and they were able to spread it out amongst all the plates. So some really creative food people on campus, I have to admit. Anyway, so All America Selections. I'm a judge. This year I'm going to be doing my very first judging for edibles and containers. Usually I do annuals and perennials with All America Selections, but this will be something new. So I'm going to be working with the chef on campus to judge the edibles, because I'm a plant grower and he's a plant consumer, so it'll be a good combination, I'm sure. But I just want you to point this incredible resource out to you. If you're interested in trying something different as far as vegetables from seed go, try going to this website, allamericaselections.org. And look for winners. And like, this organization's been around for 88 years. So it's been judging edibles and ornamentals for quite a long time. You can also, on this website, find plants that are, or edibles that are suitable for containers. So there's a search function, find plant vegetables that work well in containers. And you can also find vegetables that are uniquely suitable for your region. And let me just explain that. All America Selections has two categories of winners. They have regional winners. And for example, we're in the Great Lakes region. So something that does well in the Great Lakes region may not do well in Texas, for example. So that's why they have broken this down into regional winners as well as national winners. And on the right hand side of these peas, these did well in almost every part of Canada and the US that they were trialed in, so they became a national winner. Okay, so you can search by those different categories, and we will so just so you can, there's a lot on that website. You can search for ornamentals as well, but if you're looking for edibles, herbs, and vegetables, it's a great site to go to. So this might be an example of, this is a winner. There's a lot of peppers and tomatoes in the winner category, the All America Selections. This is a regional winner, Great Lakes, West Northwest, as you can see, suitable for containers. A lot of peppers are, because they just tend to have more of a compact habit, but you have sweet peppers and hot peppers. There's quite a range. Kale, of course, this we had in the winner's garden beside the greenhouse, as well as suitable for containers. This is a national winner. And herbs, of course, we have this Bayesian Persian basil from 2015. So This one, see this regional, it's not, but it's not really suitable, or it didn't win in this region, in the Great Lakes region. So it may not be a great choice for you. Okay, and beans, some beans work well in containers as well. And this is certainly one that, a lot of things would work in containers if they're given proper support as well. And I think you may have noticed in that chef's garden picture where they were trying to grow sweet corn in a 5-gallon pail, and it did work, but once the pot starts to dry out, it tended to blow over very easily in the wind. So I think when we're looking for container specimens, we're looking for something that doesn't get too big, and I guess it depends on the size of your container as well. So judge it. This was a type of garlic chives. It's geisha. It's a perennial as well as being a very flavorful herb. And I grew this one for a number of reasons. Here's a picture of it. This is probably about 4-year-old plant that I dug up out of a trial garden and put it into a large pot. And then I overwinter this in a hoop house. So it does freeze in this hoop house, but it doesn't get, the temperature fluctuations are quite minor. And yeah, it's suitable for eating as well as being a great pollinator plant. And this was covered in bees. So, it looks nice. It's ornamental in its own right, but it can be used for culinary purposes. Okay. So this is back to working with the chefs, and this is VJ here, front view of him, and he is evaluating some of the plants out at the trial garden. And one of the things that we, when I do some harvesting, one of the parts of harvesting these vegetables, that's a critical part of evaluating, and how much yield do you get from a plant. And so we had, here's, I think there were 3 plants originally in this pot. It's a 16-inch pot, and we probably could have got away with 1, but we were talking about 536 peppers from this container over the course of the season. So quite a yield. And then we turned it over to VJ, and he was looking at enjoying, evaluating it from a chef's perspective. And so here are his comments. Flesh alone, flavorful and mildly spicy. Seeds adds some extreme heat element to the pepper. So they were making a hot sauce out of this pepper sauce. And hot sauces on campus are incredibly popular. Yeah, it's a fun thing for food services to do for the students, and when they're back. Some of you may recognize Dennis Flanagan in this picture. This was at the Landscape Ontario trial, and this Primero red pepper was in the vegetable trial there. And anyway, I thought that was a fun shot. We were all standing around waiting for him to respond to a hot pepper. So here it is in a container in our garden at the trial site in Guelph, and looking quite ornamental, flowing over the edges. We have a display in a normal year, we would have a display at the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, and this was 2018. And I was brought into trying to find some container or some ornamental displays with plants. And I think this was a robotic vegetable picker for use in the greenhouse, and they wanted something that was to coincide with that. Anyway, these are all Primero the peppers, and they look quite nice when they were installed. Apparently, a lot of these walked away during the course of the show, so a lot of sampling was going on. But it was, in addition to being a great food, very prolific provider of food, it was also ornamental for our display here. This is a small little sweet pepper, a bell pepper that's essentially bite size. It's called Snackabelle Red, and here this worked well in the containers as well as the ground. Um, I often will have just as a comment, when I was putting this slideshow together, I would be looking for good container pictures, and I wouldn't always come up with them, but I might have a ground bed version, so that's why there's a bit of a mix here. So according to VJ, nice, looks good, good sweetness. Some of them are a little tougher to bite than usual sweet peppers. So that was his comments on it. Now, I would say that this was really questionable as a suitable container plant, but this is what we did because we didn't really know what was going to happen. So let's put it in a container and see what happens. And so again, 3 plants in a 16-inch container. By the end of the summer, we had 27 mature fruit and 38 immature fruit that we harvested on September 7th. So this gives you an idea. This butter baby is, essentially it's a single serving or for 1 or 2 people of a butternut squash. So it's quite, that might suit people who don't like to have leftovers in their fridge. Anyway, it was a nice little butternut squash to work with. And well, here's another shot from the Milton site. But here's a shot from VJ, and again, more creative thinking what to do with a squash. And so here, essentially, he created the menu using quinoa and puree to really make that a very tasty entree or component of a main meal. So that's I'll just leave all America selections for a few minutes and go back to what the breeders are doing with plants and vegetables. And this essentially a lot of what they're doing is packaging groups of plants and vegetables for marketing purposes. And I would say in this case, we have plants, mostly peppers and tomatoes. I picked one example here from their website, but of plants that will really work well on a container. And these plants, will get to a height of 12 to 14 inches and a spread of 8 to 10. So you can imagine this on your windowsill, on your patio table. You could put quite a few of these plants in different places and not take up a lot of room and have quite a variety of plants for your culinary needs. So another breeder, this is cicada. The previous one was ball. Putting together, again, packaging what they have on offer to be used. So they have cicada homegrown, is talking about different vegetables and containers that could be used. And so Swiss chard, different colors and mixed plantings of pansies and Swiss chard in this example. Burpee is a brand associated with ball, and they are, they've been doing vegetable sales for a lot of years. And again, they would take their offerings and try to package them by similar growth habits. And you have the organic stream and amazing vegetables, like really interesting ones, and vegetables, arrange them by their nutritional characteristics. So as people become more and more interested in vegetables and edibles, basically the companies are responding by trying to meet the different needs of the buying public. Back to Ball. This is another. Ball is a huge horticultural company, and they have lots of divisions, and so they have Pan American Seed is another division, and they take some of the herbs, for example, and packaging them as hand-picked vegetables. And here's a whole range, all from seed, that have characteristics that are similar. Maybe it's a similar growth habit, vigor. To be allowing you to mix them together in different planting combinations, so this is what this picture is. And that same company may take, they also have a division that's into perennials. And so they would, like Darwin perennials, take the perennials, they're herbs in this case, that are perennial, and mixing them together for a patio planter, and giving them some really interesting names with respect to any side characteristics that you might have. So buzz off mix of perennial herbs, or mixture of annuals and perennials, with that are pollinator attractive, as well as being a fun culinary planting, baking up a storm. So again, these are interesting ways of presenting herbs that could be available in garden centers, or custom made by yourself. And what about berries? You know, we think of tomatoes, and we think of peppers and herbs in containers. Excuse me. But there's also selecting for, in this case, we have raspberries and blueberries. You know, selecting for perennial shrubby of fruits that can be grown in containers. As long as they are protected during the winter and adequately watered, there's no reason why this would not work. But I think they're also selecting vigor. You know, raspberries can be quite wild, very tall, and these selections have been made to make it more container friendly. Okay, I think I didn't delete that one. Anyway, next going on to lettuces and mixes of lettuces, or greens, I should say, salad greens. This is creating your own mixed spring mix of salad, where you don't have to blend different plantings together into a salad. The idea in these scenarios, and there's different blends of different types of greens, is that you may have a lettuce, you may have a mustard green, you may have a cress, all fused together in a pellet of seed, and you plant it out, and then you get this mixed salad mix right from get-go. So these are options out there now. I tried some last year that were mustard greens, 3 different species of mustard. And I think I have a picture of it that's gone to seed, but to give you an idea, this was all blended together in one mega seed, if we will, combined seed pellet. So it worked well, and repeated cuttings. I mean, 2 or 3, I think, repeated cuttings. It was a hot summer last year, so certain things work better than others, but yeah. And then focusing in this case on a range of one species. These are a selection of basils from Pan American Seed, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about a few of these. This is Everleaf Emerald Towers. Now, if you notice, I don't know if you really, maybe once we see some of the other photos, you'll notice better that this is has a very tight growth habit. The internodes between the leaves are pretty tight, and it has a very upright growing habit. Okay, Everleaf Emerald Towers. Okay, and here's another one, Basil Newton is the cultivar name. Pesto Party and Dolce Fresca, and this is an All-America Selections winner as well from 2015. So those were all from Pan American Seed. Now, in our containers, we grew the Newton. That's a Genovese. So here's a picture taken August 8th, 3 plants in a container. We were needing to support this a little bit with bamboo. Maybe we just could have got off without a support if we just had 1 plant in there. But right behind it, so you'll see, I don't think we didn't harvest this basil, which was a shame in retrospect, but we wanted to see what would happen to it as it's growing. But you can see it, you know, early August, starting to bloom. Behind it is another basil, no bloom. And that's the Everleaf Emerald Towers basil. Just absolutely gorgeous plant. And for me, I don't eat a lot of basil, but I just love this plant. It didn't bloom. So that the leaves did not get bitter. over the course of the summer. And it's got this habit of blooming over 9 weeks later than a lot of the other basils out there. Okay. Peppers, of course, again, this is from Ball, but a whole range. It's called plug and play, where you, again, mixed peppers. I guess this is it over here, where you have a mixed container with different types of peppers in it. Incredibly ornamental as well as edible, right? And this is one that I grew a few years ago called Wicked. And it was quite hot, as the name might suggest, but very, very decorative, ornamental to look at. And this is another one, Harlequin, not quite as hot as Wicked, but again, 3 plants in a 16-inch container, looking very, very good. The pepper on the right is an ornamental pepper, but beautiful fall coloration, really dark purple with that brilliant red. And we have another pepper from Ball. This is something called Candy Cane Red. And I realize this is not the best picture, but I'll just point this out. As this fruit is developing, it has, in its green unripe mode, it has white and green stripes. And the foliage is somewhat variegated. Unfortunately, those white stripes disappear when it ripens to red, but it would have been really... Anyway, that was the hope maybe when they called it Candy Cane Red, but it's kind of ornamental compared to a lot of other peppers. And what about eggplant? This is one that we trialed, Asian Delight. I think there are quite a few eggplants would suit container applications. The fruit tends to be on the smaller side, and this is certainly one of them. And again, really, from an ornamental perspective, you have the flower and you have the nice dark purple stems and venation coupled with green. But you have nice stir-fried sized eggplant fruit to be used, right? And this was Asian Delight, and this was in the garden. Anyway, it's kind of hard to see the fruit, but that was that. And then you have, what about strawberries? We talked a little bit about fruits that are like the raspberry and the blueberry. This is, there's the pinkish strawberry. There's also a really dark red one. This was a strawberry specialist breeder with their display. But they also, of course, have the white. This is an All-American Selections winner, Deliz. This is started from seed, and beautiful white flowers, and it's sort of a day neutral bloomer, so it'll bloom constantly, ever bearing type of strawberry, but really nice plant for a container as well as a hanging basket. Okay, proven winners. We think of proven winners primarily being ornamental, but they have embraced the interest in vegetables. And here we are seeing, this is their display at California, and just showing the small little cherry type tomatoes that they have that are very suitable for containers. I haven't trialed any of those yet, but I did they also have peppers that are quite tiny and really suitable for container applications. But they also have some bigger tomatoes that I guess if you have a big enough container, it's suitable. This tends to be more of an indeterminate style of growth. But a few years ago, when the very first tomatoes that they put into the trial was one, Garden Gem. And this actually comes out of a breeding program at the University of Florida on tomatoes. So you can actually you can buy seed from the University of Toronto, or Florida rather, from their tomato breeding program. But this is also available. That's a bit of a nuisance. You can also buy these as ready to go plants from proven winners. And this was the yield. I had one plant in a 16-inch container and produced 557 fruit by the middle of September. So that's a lot of fruit and very flavorful. Everybody loved this plant and they loved the fruit from it. And also was a slightly larger fruit from Garden Treasure. Again, very similar yield, and really it's a bigger fruit, so the yield was down, but it was really prolific. And anyway, a little bit wild for a container. I don't, okay, but it can be used if you support it. So again, back to proven winners, and this is the Buried Treasure red strawberry that they have. Um, and they used to have a pink one. I can't remember if that's still around, but it also produces nice red flavorful fruit. I forgot to mention that. So a very important thing. So again, these dual purpose plants are great to have.
Rodger, we're starting to run out of time here, and we've got a lot of questions, really great questions.
Okay.
So I'd like to spend a bit of time going over those, because
Sure.
I think there was at least 3 or 4 questions just about peat. At the very beginning, you were talking about peat a fair bit. I know in like when we're in the commercial greenhouses, like ProMix BX is pretty popular. It does contain peat, but there are some environmental concerns about using peat because it's not necessarily sustainable. So is there a peat alternative that, home growers can access right now?
Okay. So, I had the fortune of going to a peat bog in Quebec. And yeah, peat is, we do have a lot of peat in Canada, but yeah, it has got a lot of, there's a concern about harvesting it because it takes thousands of years to
Yeah,
reproduce.
it's very concerning in the UK in particular.
Yes, yeah, and because they used it as a fuel source as well, right?
Mhm.
And so, okay, one of the characteristics of peat, I think that's really kind of interesting is it's unique in the sense of its water wicking capabilities. Okay,
Yes.
so when we look at some of those other items that I had, like coconut coir, and we also had the expanded wood fibers, they do not have. If you look at peat and those items under a microscope, you're going to see different cellular components, and
Yeah.
certainly peat is really good at wicking. So can you replace peat with wood fiber or
Like
coir?
would shredded straw work perhaps, kind of keep the
Well, you know
moisture
what?
in?
I know there are some people that have done straw bale
Yeah.
growing and working with and straw. I'm just not sure if I think you need to look at what if you're going to be watering or irrigating from underneath. Let's say your house plants and you're putting them into a saucer and you water from underneath.
Mm-hmm.
That the peat is really good at wicking that up. If you were to put coconut coir and I haven't really tried straw, chopped up straw, would it wick the same way? Those are things you'd have to trial. Now, if you're watering from overhead, then you may not have that as an issue.
Right.
So I think you just have to analyze what your needs are a little bit better.
Yeah, how we're growing it, and then
Yeah,
also what we're growing, your water needs in total.
that's right.
Because tomatoes and peppers are obviously going to take a lot of moisture because we want to get the fruit out of them.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So
So I've just
continuing
been,
with water,
yeah.
from the chef's garden, you had all those containers. Like, how often would they have to water? And I sure hope that there was an irrigation set up there, or was it all hand watering?
Well, that was all hand watering.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's
And yeah,
commitment.
hundreds of pots. And that was labor intensive, and they had somebody available to do the watering. I wasn't
Right.
doing it for them. Yeah. So we're going to be setting up. Yeah, we're going to be setting up a pepper planting. I think we're going to have 100 pots of hot peppers going in the greenhouse, in the gravel around the greenhouse, and that's definitely going to be on trickle irrigation.
Mm-hmm.
That's to create a hot sauce called Cannon Fire. um, anyway, so this is a student project this coming season, and yeah, we need to use some irrigation, and that's We find that the best way to do it is with trickle irrigation. We have computer controlled emitters. So it turns on that we will, as the season progresses, as the plants get bigger, they'll maybe need water more frequently, so we can adjust that very easily.
Okay.
So we could either increase the frequency if it's big plant, real vigorous plant, and then half the plants are really small. We might put 2 emitters into to the big plant and 1 emitter into the small plant pot to compensate for the different water demands.
Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, what you saw in the chef's garden was hand watered.
Right. So another question, how do I get perlite out of my garden bed? I've dumped a lot of container soil over the years.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to suggest you have to do that, but I'm just saying, can we stop doing it for the future? I don't know. You may really hate the look of it, in which case maybe the best way is just every time you water and it floats to the surface and runs, it creates some catch ditches in your garden, and you can scoop it out easily. Like if it floods up and floats have it drain to a catchment basin maybe.
Okay.
That might be a way to do it, because I do see it at the edge. Whenever I edge my flower beds, I see it sort of collecting in those areas. So it'd be relatively easy to do. And it's not going to hurt your garden, and it's just more appearance item.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So what about vermiculite? Are there any environmental concerns of using that?
There were, okay, I have to be careful how I say this. Years ago, there was a concern about asbestos contamination in it. That has since changed. That's no longer a concern. Getting it into your bed, I don't think that's I don't think that's a problem either. And I'm just trying to plug in my computer here. I see the battery's low.
No worries.
Anyway, how many minutes do we have left here?
Just a couple of minutes, and I think we'll do 2 more questions. So
okay.
I have a feeling I know who typed this question in, because as Halton Food works in a lot of community gardens, we come across different ways of taking care of plants. So for your trial garden using vegetables, do you prune the tomatoes or prune only some to compare yields between pruned and not pruned?
Yeah, so I think, okay, I think I got it plugged in now. I don't think I guess, what am I trying to achieve? I think with the vegetables, we try to manage them to optimize quality and yield. Okay. So if that would require pruning, taking off suckers or whatever, then I would do that. But so basically I have to standardize it. So if it requires pruning, then I would. So for the ornamentals, for example, do I deadhead or don't I? And it all depends on the plant. So I would try to treat all your plants in one plant category the same way.
Okay.
And just to try to level the playing field that way. And then one another thing to consider with tomatoes, for example, you want to keep the air movement in the canopy, and if it gets too dense, that increases the powdery mildew and other potential diseases, right? So you want the foliage to dry off relatively fast. So like I say, the health and quality of the plant and the fruit is important, and you want to adjust it that way. That's what I would suggest anyway.
Right. So we'll continue with the to prune or not to prune is the question. Right.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Rodger, for joining us today. For those of you we didn't have time to answer your questions, we do have a meet and greet on Saturday afternoon with the Oakville Hort Society. And yeah, bring all your questions. We've got a panel of about 5 experts that are there to help you with your gardening knowledge. Then Rodger will also be back with us this Friday to talk more about these winners, like finding out, which ones you're going to find in the nursery this spring and summer to plant in your gardens. So thank you very much again, Rodger.
Okay, thank you for having me. Okay, bye now.
Bye.